The cough sounded like death learning to scream. Arin Cho heard it from 40 feet away, through reinforced glass, and the sterile hum of Hanul Premier Medical Center, a wet, tearing sound that didn't belong in human lungs. The VIP suite's observation wall faced the corridor, one-way glass for families, reinforced for privacy. She pressed herself deeper into the service corridor's shadow, fingers clutching the frayed edge of her hoodie, watching nurses sprint past like white-coated ghosts. Nobody saw her. Nobody ever did. In Seoul, her black skin made her memorable to the wrong people and invisible to the right ones. Security noticed her. Power ignored her. And she'd learned to occupy the spaces between sight and acknowledgement like they were built for her. But she couldn't unsee what was happening in VIP Suite 12. Chun Young-soo, tech billionaire, national treasure, the man whose face sold everything from smartphones to prestige charities and whispered influence, the kind of man ministers called Sir, even when he wasn't in the room, was dying in real time. His body arched against silk sheets worth more than most people's cars, tendons straining like bridge cables about to snap. Monitors screamed their digital terror, oxygen saturation plummeting, heart rate climbing into dangerous territory. 3 doctors converged on him with the controlled chaos of people who'd trained for this exact nightmare, hands moving in practiced choreography, voices clipped and clinical. Then the smell hit her. Sweet, wrong, like caramelized blood and rotting fruit left in summer heat. It crawled through the ventilation system, past the hand sanitizer and antiseptic, past the expensive floral arrangements some corporate yes-man had sent. Arin's grandmother's voice rose from memory like smoke from an extinguished candle. When the dying breath smells sweet, child, the lungs are already surrendering. That's not sickness. That's invasion. Arin knew that scent, and she knew the cruel rule that came with it. The more oxygen they gave him, the faster he'd die. And the worst part? The doctors were about to do exactly what the poison wanted. Her grandmother had been a healer in Atlanta before the world forgot what that meant, before Western medicine made profits into superstition. She'd taught Arin to read bodies the way other kids learned to read street signs, by survival, by necessity, by the absolute certainty that ignorance killed. Arin had tried to live normal once. She tried to be the good daughter, the tidy student, the grateful immigrant. But life had snapped in the places it always snapped, for people without safety nets. A broken sponsorship, a lapsed visa clock, and one eviction later, Seoul had turned into a city she slept under. This wasn't pneumonia, wasn't COVID or flu or any sanitized diagnosis these doctors would write on their clipboards. This was something old. Young-soo coughed again, and this time Arin saw it, the almost imperceptible pink mist that left his lips hanging in the air for a heartbeat before the ventilation system devoured it. The doctors didn't flinch. They were too focused on machines, on protocols, on the science that had built this gleaming tower of glass and certainty. They didn't smell what she smelled. They didn't see the way his fingernails had gone slightly gray at the edges, like frost creeping across a window. They didn't notice the nurse who'd just left the room touching her own throat, swallowing hard, her face suddenly pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Arin stood slowly, every instinct screaming contradictions. Run, stay, hide, speak. She was nobody, a ghost haunting Seoul's margins, surviving on day labor cash and the kindness of the few who still remembered compassion. Her words carried no weight here. Her knowledge meant nothing against their degrees and equipment and institutional arrogance. But she'd seen this before. 6 years ago, in an Atlanta shelter during the coldest winter on record, when the coughing started sweet and ended with body bags. Her hands were shaking. The nurse stumbled, caught herself against the wall. And Arin Cho made the choice that would either save thousands or mark her as the madwoman who caused a panic inside Korea's most prestigious medical facility. She stepped into the light. The specialists arrived like conquistadors claiming doomed territory: pulmonology, toxicology, ICU consultants whose hourly rates could feed families for months, flown in from Johns Hopkins, and the Mayo Clinic on private jets that landed with the urgency of war. Some were already in Asia for conferences. Others were on retainer for exactly this kind of crisis. They crowded the observation glass like vultures studying prey, tablets glowing, voices low and sharp with the particular arrogance of people who'd never admitted ignorance. Dr. Kang Ji-hoon, chief of pulmonary medicine, stared at scans that should have told stories, but whispered only contradictions. Lungs clear, no fluid accumulation, no bacterial signatures, no viral markers. Blood work returned results so unremarkably normal they felt like mockery. Inflammation markers barely elevated. White cell count textbook stable. Every test designed to catch disease caught nothing. Ji-hoon wasn't just chief tonight, he was command. Yet Yong-soo was drowning in air. Increase oxygen to 90%, Ji-hoon ordered, stylus tapping against his tablet, like a nervous tell he'd never acknowledge. Arin watched from her shadow as they adjusted the flow. The billionaire's chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, tubes invading his throat, machines breathing for muscles that had forgotten their purpose. For 30 seconds, the monitors stabilized. Hope flickered across expensive faces. Then Yong-soo's body went rigid. Oxygen saturation dropped like a stone thrown from a bridge. 87%, 82, 79. The ventilator screamed its futile protest. Ji-hoon's face drained of color beneath surgical lights that made everyone look already dead. That's impossible, someone whispered. But impossible was breathing in that room, thick as the sweet rot smell they still couldn't identify. A younger doctor, Harvard-educated, Aaron had overheard, spoke the question everyone was avoiding. Could this be engineered? Biological warfare? Ji-hoon's laugh came bitter and sharp. This is Seoul, not a Tom Clancy novel. We're missing something obvious. They weren't missing it. They were educated past seeing it. Arin pressed her spine against cold concrete, watching them increase oxygen again, despite the evidence screaming at them to stop. Her grandmother's words circled like birds before a storm. Western medicine treats the body like a machine. Sometimes the machine metaphor is the blindness. This poison, and she knew it was poison now, knew it with the certainty of bones recognizing winter. This poison was designed for exactly this response, for the protocol, for the assumption that more oxygen meant more life. It fed on their certainty the way fire fed on wind. Yong-soo's fingernails had gone fully gray now, like ash settling after flame. The pink mist came with every mechanical breath, so fine the ventilation system devoured it before comprehension could form. And that nurse, the one who'd touched her throat, had left her station, stumbling toward the bathroom with one hand pressed against her chest. Nobody noticed. They were too busy arguing about whether to attempt bronchoscopy, whether to call in experimental treatments, whether to transfer him to a facility with better isolation protocols. Dr. Ji-hoon finally said the words that hung in the room like execution orders. We don't know what this is. The admission should have freed them. Instead, it shackled them harder to protocols that were killing their patient. They increased oxygen to 95%. Yong-soo's body arched against restraints nobody remembered fastening, tendons standing out like cables under too much tension. The monitors painted their electric horror across screens worth more than Aaron's entire existence. And in that moment, watching brilliant people apply logic to something that operated on different laws entirely, she understood why her grandmother had died alone in that Atlanta shelter, despite knowing exactly what was killing everyone. Knowledge without authority was just noise. The sweet smell intensified, crawling through her sinuses, coating the back of her throat. She recognized it now, not from medical experience, but from survival, from the shelter, from watching 12 people cough themselves into body bags while doctors prescribed antibiotics and called it pneumonia, from knowing that sometimes poison wore the face of natural death so convincingly that only the desperate could see the mask. Yong-soo's oxygen saturation hit 72%, and Aaron Cho realized she had perhaps 90 seconds to decide whether staying invisible was worth watching another person die from educated ignorance. Her hands were shaking. The machines were screaming. and somewhere in the filtered air, the poison was laughing. Erin's legs moved before her mind finished arguing with survival instinct. She stepped from shadow into the fluorescent brutality of institutional lighting, her dark skin suddenly visible against white walls, her homelessness suddenly obscene in this cathedral of wealth. Every eye in the corridor turned toward her, like weapons acquiring target. "Stop the oxygen!" Her voice came smaller than intended, swallowed by alarm sounds and the mechanical hiss of the ventilator. But it carried enough to slice through the specialist's argument about whether to increase sedation. Dr. Ji-hoon's face cycled through confusion, recognition, and fury in under 2 seconds. Security. 2 guards materialized with the speed of men paid to make problems disappear. Hands reached for her arms, not rough yet, but promising roughness if she resisted. "You're making it stronger." Erin's voice shook but held. "The oxygen. It feeds on it. You're giving it exactly what it needs." Laughter erupted from the younger doctor, the Harvard one, sharp and disbelieving. "This is a secured medical facility. How did who let a homeless person into the VIP wing?" "She was probably sleeping in a service closet," another specialist offered, already turning back to the monitors as if Erin had stopped existing the moment her poverty became visible. The guard's grips tightened. "I've seen this before." Desperation made her words rush together, tumbling over each other. "Atlanta, 6 years ago. 43 people dead in 3 weeks. They kept increasing oxygen, and people kept dying faster. It's not infection. It's not disease. It's poison designed to hide in plain sight. Designed to make you think you're helping when you're..." Enough. Ji-hoon's voice carried the weight of institutions, of decades of authority, of knowing that his word could erase people like her from existence. "Remove her. File trespassing charges. I want her barred from hospital property permanently." The guards pulled. Erin's feet scraped against polished floor. Then the sound came raw, desperate, barely human. Young-soo forcing his eyes open against sedation and oxygen deprivation, muscles screaming protest, tubes distorting his face into something monstrous. His hand moved, trembling, fighting restraints and gravity and the poison eating his lungs from inside. He pointed at Erin. The gesture was unmistakable, the meaning undeniable. "Let her talk." His voice came shredded, each word costing him breath he couldn't afford. But the command in it froze everyone. This was Chun Young-soo, the man who'd built telecommunications empires, who had presidents on speed dial, whose quarterly earnings reports moved stock markets. His worth exceeded the GDP of small nations. When he spoke, even dying, even choking, the world rearranged itself to listen. Silence fell like a blade severing all sound. The guard's hands loosened but didn't release. Ji-hoon's face performed complex calculations, medical authority versus financial power, institutional protocol versus self-preservation. The equation resolved quickly. He gestured, and the guard stepped back. Not far, just enough. "You have 30 seconds, Ji-hoon said, his voice promising consequences for wasting them. Erin's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd demanded this moment and now stood terrified in it, aware that everyone in this corridor had more education, more authority, more reason to be believed than she ever would. Her knowledge came from a dead grandmother and a massacre in an Atlanta shelter that never made national news because the victims were homeless and black and therefore unremarkable. But Young-soo was still looking at her with eyes that recognized desperation because he was drowning in it. "The oxygen is poison to him right now," she said, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Not because his lungs are failing, because something is coating them. Something that reacts with high oxygen concentrations. It tightens, hardens, turns breath into suffocation. Every time you increase the flow, you make it stronger. That's medically impossible," the Harvard doctor said. "So is him dying with clear scans and normal blood work." 2 KQs. The sentence landed like a fist. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. Young-soo's hand moved again, this time toward the tubing, fingers clawing weakly. "If I'm wrong," Erin said, "he dies. But he's dying anyway. Your medicine ran out of answers 10 minutes ago. The machine screamed. The poison waited. And every person in that corridor realized they were standing at the edge of something that didn't fit in their textbooks. Young-Soo's gesture was unmistakable. Remove the tube, or I'll rip it out myself. Ji-hoon hesitated, trapped between protocols designed for normal deaths and the reality that nothing about this was normal. Finally, he nodded to the respiratory therapist, who began the delicate process of extubation with hands that shook slightly. The tube came out. Young-Soo's first independent breath sounded like paper tearing. Shallow, desperate. But they switched him to high-flow oxygen through a tight mask, less invasive, still lethal in the wrong way. Closer. The word cost him everything. Erin stepped forward, aware of every eye on her. Every doubt crystallized into stares that could cut. She stopped at the bedside, close enough to smell the sweet rot on his breath, close enough to see the gray spreading from his nails toward his knuckles like frost, claiming territory. "What do you know?" he rasped. "Not enough," she admitted. "But more than them." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or respect for honesty in a room built on professional certainty. "Explain." "The poison coats your lungs, creates a film that reacts with oxygen. The more air, the tighter it contracts. Like plastic wrap heated, it shrinks, seals, suffocates. It's designed to look like respiratory failure, to make doctors do exactly what they're trained to do. And every intervention kills you faster." "That's pharmacologically unsupported speculation," Ji-hoon interjected, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Erin ignored him, focused on Young-Soo. 6 years ago, I watched this happen. 43 people in an Atlanta shelter. Doctors called it pneumonia. Prescribed oxygen, antibiotics, ventilators. Everyone who got treatment died within 72 hours. The 5 who refused medical help because they didn't trust the system, they survived. Barely, but they survived. How? Young-Soo's breathing was labored, but focused. My grandmother treated them. She was a healer before Western medicine made that word mean crazy. She knew plants that worked on principles your scans can't measure. She used something she called harmony leaf. Said it restored balance when the body turned against itself. The Harvard doctor scoffed. Herbal remedies, folk medicine. This man needs science, not. Your science is killing him. Erin's voice came sharper than intended. Look at him. Every number you worship says he should be fine, but he's dying because you can't see past your education. Young-Soo's hand moved weakly, silencing the room again. His eyes never left Erin's face. Can you stop it? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. She could lie, claim certainty she didn't possess, but something in his gaze demanded truth, and lies had never protected her anyway. I don't know, she said quietly. My grandmother used harmony leaf. It worked, but I was young. I watched, but I didn't. I can't promise. Can you try? The simple question carried weight that crushed qualifications and doubt. Binary choice, yes or no. Try or watch him die. Yes. Ji-hoon stepped forward, tablet raised like a shield. Mr. Chun, I cannot recommend. You can't recommend anything that works. Young-Soo's voice was weakening, words coming slower. Your recommendations are killing me. She's offering what you can't. A chance. It's untested, unregulated. We have no idea. She's right about the oxygen. The admission clearly cost Ji-hoon his professional pride, visible in the tightness around his eyes. Increasing it did accelerate deterioration. That shouldn't happen, but it did. Silence settled like dust. What do you need? Young-Soo asked Erin. Time to get the herb. And she hesitated. You have to trust me. When I come back, it's going to look wrong. It's going to look like I'm hurting you. Your body will fight it violently before it accepts it. The doctors will want to stop me. They won't. The command in his voice was absolute despite breathlessness. Erin turned to leave, then stopped. The nurse. The one who was in here when you first started coughing. She touched her throat, left looking sick. Ji-hoon's face drained. Contagious? No. But she breathed what you're not seeing. Check her. If I'm right about the poison, she'll have symptoms within the hour. Erin didn't wait for response. She ran. The moment Erin left, they panicked and cranked the flow higher. Behind her, someone called the nursing station to locate the missing nurse. The call went unanswered because she was already in a bathroom stall, coughing into her hands, tasting something sweet. Erin made it 15 feet before Ji-hoon's hand closed on her shoulder, not rough, but firm enough to stop her momentum. His touch carried the careful calculation of a man who'd learned to apply exactly enough force to control without creating witnesses. A moment. His voice was smooth, professional, the kind of calm that preceded cruelty. He guided her into a small consultation room, the kind where doctors delivered terminal diagnoses to families who couldn't afford better news. The door clicked shut with finality. Through the narrow window, Irene could see nurses moving past, oblivious or deliberately blind. Ji-hoon didn't sit. Neither did she. "You seem like an intelligent young woman," he began, and the compliment felt like a hand checking for weapon concealment. "Certainly intelligent enough to understand the position you've put yourself in. I'm trying to save his life." "No." Ji-hoon's correction came gentle, almost pitying. "You're trying to delay his death. There's a difference." Erin's spine straightened. "You said yourself the oxygen was making him worse." "An anomaly. Medical complications happen, but this patient will not survive." He spoke with the certainty of prophecy, not prognosis. "His condition is too advanced. When he dies, and he will die, there will be investigations, lawsuits, criminal inquiries. A man of Chun Young-soo's stature doesn't simply expire without consequences cascading through every person in proximity to his final hours." Mind versus. The threat was obvious. Erin was proximate, homeless, black, foreign, the perfect variable to eliminate from the equation. "You don't want to be part of that aftermath," Ji-hoon continued. "You don't want your name in reports. You don't want prosecutors asking why a vagrant was in a secured VIP wing, why she had access to a dying billionaire, why she administered unregulated substances that tragically failed to save him." Understanding crashed over Erin like cold water. "You want him to die." "I want him to die peacefully, without needless suffering, prolonged by desperate measures." Ji-hoon's face remained professionally sympathetic. "I want his family to grieve without having to question whether some irregular intervention contributed to his passing. I want everyone involved to avoid the legal nightmare that follows when people deviate from established protocols." "You're letting him die on purpose. I'm allowing nature to take its course." The distinction clearly mattered to him, some ethical line he'd drawn to sleep at night. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is accept limits. Irene stared at this man in his expensive white coat, his designer glasses, his wedding ring that probably cost more than her entire year of survival. He believed what he was saying, believed he was being merciful, believed that his education gave him the right to decide when fighting became futile. He had no idea what was actually killing Young-soo. Or maybe he did. The thought arrived with chilling clarity. The way he'd phrased it, "This patient will not survive." Not, might not, or probably won't. Will not. Certainty that preceded outcome. And the phone conversation she'd half heard earlier, a doctor's voice, drifting through ventilation. Something about letting the lungs finish collapsing. "What did they pay you?" The question came before Erin could stop it. Ji-hoon's face flickered surprise, then practiced neutrality. "That's an incredibly serious accusation. You know what's killing him. You knew before the symptoms even started. You're distraught, confused. I understand that your background might make you suspicious of institutional medicine, but paranoid fantasies don't help anyone." He was good, turning her accusation into proof of her instability, using her poverty and race as evidence of unreliability. She'd seen this move before, in Atlanta, when her grandmother tried to tell shelter administrators that people were being poisoned. They'd called her senile, delusional, a liability. 3 days later, the body count started. "I'm leaving now," Aaron said, voice carefully neutral. She played the part he needed, chastened, aware of her place, disappearing back into invisibility. "You're right. I don't want to be part of investigations." Relief flickered across Ji-hoon's face. "I'm glad you understand. For what it's worth, I believe you meant well. But some situations are beyond help. Accepting that is part of wisdom." Erin nodded, ducked her head, made herself small in the way survival had taught her. She left the consultation room with shoulders hunched, defeated posture, every signal screaming that she'd been properly cowed and would slink away into whatever shadows spawned her. Ji-hoon watched her go, satisfied. He didn't see her pause near the service corridor, didn't notice her slip sideways into maintenance access, didn't realize that invisibility was armor she'd worn so long it had become weaponized. Erin moved through the hospital's hidden architecture, the spaces between walls where homeless people learned to navigate, where the city's forgotten mapped alternative geographies the wealthy never imagined existed. She had maybe 90 minutes before Yong-Soo's condition became irreversible, and she had to retrieve something from beneath a concrete slab in an alley 13 blocks away. Behind her, in the VIP suite, Ji-hoon checked his watch and made a phone call. "It's handled," he said quietly. "She won't be a problem." Night had claimed Seoul while Aaron was inside the hospital's artificial day. She burst through a service exit into darkness, cut by neon red and blue and electric green signs selling everything the wealthy needed to feel alive. The temperature had dropped, winter asserting itself against the city's heated denial. Her breath came visible, small clouds of proof she was still breathing even if Yong-Soo might not be soon. She ran. Not the careful jog of someone exercising, but the full-body sprint of prey with predators closing. Her legs burned, lungs screamed, but pain was optional when survival demanded speed. She'd learned that in Atlanta, running from police who saw homelessness as probable cause, from shelters closing doors at curfew, from men who thought black and alone meant available, past the designer coffee shop where a single drink cost what she earned in 3 hours of day labor, past the luxury car dealership with vehicles worth more than some people's houses, past everything, Seoul had become glass towers and wealth displays and careful architecture designed to make poverty impossible to ignore while remaining easy to dismiss. 13 blocks. She counted them in gasps and footfalls. Her shelter she couldn't call it home. Home implied ownership, occupied a space between legitimacy and oblivion. An alley behind a restaurant that had closed 8 months ago, where the building's back wall created a small alcove blocked from Main Street view. Not safe. Nowhere was safe, but familiar, known, mapped in muscle memory from hundreds of nights. She dropped to her knees on concrete, worn smooth by weather and time, fingers finding the loose section she'd carefully maintained. The slab lifted with resistance, heavy, resisting, requiring leverage she applied with desperate strength. Beneath it, her cash. A dented metal tin that had once held expensive cookies someone threw away. Inside, everything she owned that mattered. 43,000 won in crumpled bills, weeks of work. A photo of her grandmother, edges soft with handling. Her passport, creased but valid, and wrapped in cloth that had once been part of a pillowcase, harmony leaf. Dried, blackened, ugly in the way medicine often was before pharmaceutical companies made it pretty and profitable. The leaves looked dead brittle, curled, unremarkable. Most people would see trash. Her grandmother had seen salvation. Erin's hand shook as she lifted the bundle. 6 years she'd carried this. 6 years of keeping it close, through shelters and streets and seasons. Some superstitious part of her afraid that losing it meant losing the last piece of her grandmother's knowledge. She'd never imagined needing it, never wanted to need it. Needing it meant someone was dying the same way those 43 people died, coughing sweet rot, while doctors applied logic to poison. She pulled a few leaves free, crushing them between her palms. The smell hit immediately bitter, sharp, cutting through the alley's ambient stench of old garbage and urine. Not pleasant, but real. Potent. The scent memory catapulted her back to Atlanta, to her grandmother's careful hands preparing doses, to whispered prayers in a language that predated English colonization. Balance for imbalance, her grandmother had said. When the body fights itself, you give it permission to stop. Irene had been 15, old enough to watch, too young to understand. Now she was 21, with no more understanding but infinite more desperation. She folded the crushed leaves into clean cloth, a handkerchief she'd found laundered and lost, pristine white against the alley's darkness, tucked the bundle into her hoodie pocket, replaced the tin, lowered the concrete slab, stood on legs that wobbled with exhaustion and adrenaline. Movement at the alley mouth froze her. A figure, male, backlit by streetlight. For a terrible second she thought Ji-hoon had sent security, that she'd been followed, that this was how the story ended, beaten in an alley for the crime of trying. Then the figure moved forward, and she recognized Mr. Park, the elderly man who collected recyclables in this neighborhood. He'd never spoken to her, but he'd never called police either. Their relationship was built on mutual invisibility, two ghosts occupying Seoul's margins. Running from something? His voice was rough, smoke-damaged. Running to something, she corrected. He nodded like this made perfect sense, pulled a small bottle from his coat. Soju, offered it. Erin shook her head. Be careful, he said. Not wisdom, just observation. Then he shuffled past, dragging his cart of aluminum cans worth fractions of one. Erin ran again. Back through neon and darkness. Back past the architecture of wealth that had no room for people like her. Back toward the hospital where a man was dying because poison wore the face of nature and doctors couldn't see past their education. She had the cure. She had maybe an hour before Yong-Soo's lungs collapsed completely. And she had to break into a building she'd just been banned from, past security actively looking for her. The night air cut her lungs. Her legs burned, but she ran like salvation depended on speed. Because it did. The hospital's main entrance blazed with light floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing the lobby like a stage set. Security desk, staffed by 2 guards Aaron recognized from earlier. They'd been the ones to grab her arms. They'd remember her face. And Ji-hoon had certainly ensured her description was circulated with words like trespassing and dangerous and other labels that made shooting first seem reasonable. Aaron circled to the service entrance, the place where invisibility happened, where deliveries arrived and trash departed, and the machinery of institutional care remained carefully hidden from patients who paid premium rates for the illusion of effortless healing. Locked. Card access only. She'd expected this. Homeless survival meant mapping every building's vulnerabilities, not for theft, but for shelter, for bathroom access, for the 100 small necessities that required being somewhere you weren't supposed to be. This hospital she knew well. 6 weeks ago she'd sheltered here during a typhoon, finding warm corners, while security focused on emergency admissions. The loading dock. The place where ambulances couldn't go, where medical waste went out and supplies came in. She'd slept there twice, when rain made the alley impossible. Erin climbed the fence chain link, 10 feet, topped with deterrent but not real security. Her hands found holds, her body remembered. Over the top, dropped to concrete, pain shooting through ankles but manageable. The dock door hung slightly open, propped by a cigarette butt some worker had positioned for their next smoke break. She slipped inside. The hospital's hidden architecture opened before her maintenance corridors, painted institutional beige, fluorescent lights buzzing with electrical persistence. The smell of industrial cleaner mixing with something medicinal and vaguely organic. Pipes ran overhead like mechanical intestines. Service elevators waited with doors that never fully closed. This was the body beneath the skin, the reality beneath the polished facade. Irene moved quickly but carefully. Too fast meant suspicious. Too slow meant caught. She'd learned the rhythm, purposeful but unremarkable. Like she had every right to be there. Like the hoodie and poverty were uniform enough, if you didn't look too closely. Voices ahead. She pressed against the wall, sliding sideways into a supply alcove stacked with linens. 2 orderlies passed, discussing a television show in Korean, Her rudimentary understanding could barely follow. They laughed, continued, disappeared around a corner. Irene exhaled. The VIP wing occupied the 7th floor. She found the service elevator, pressed the button, waited with heartbeat loud in her ears. The doors opened. Empty. She stepped inside, hit 7, watched the numbers climb like a countdown to consequence. 5th floor. 6th. The elevator stopped. 4th floor. Doors opening. Dr. Ji-hoon stepped in. For a frozen second their eyes met. His widened with recognition, and something else, calculation, surprise, the rapid processing of someone encountering a problem they thought they'd eliminated. His hand moved toward his phone, toward security, toward ending this before it started. Aaron hit the door close button. Once, twice, again with desperate repetition. The doors slid shut as Ji-hoon's hand reached the gap. He was speaking, shouting maybe, but the elevator was already moving, carrying her up and away. She had 30 seconds, maybe less, before he reached a phone, before security flooded the 7th floor, before this attempt ended with her in handcuffs, or worse. The elevator opened on 7. VIP wing to the right. She ran. Past empty nurses' station shift change, maybe. Or everyone pulled to emergencies. Past rooms with doors closed on private sufferings. Past the small consultation room where Ji-hoon had tried to scare her into compliance. Young-soo's suite, dead ahead. 2 security guards flanked the door. They saw her. Recognition immediate. Hands moving to weapons they probably wouldn't use but might. Aaron didn't slow. Didn't stop. Sometimes momentum was the only weapon invisibility afforded. "He's expecting me," she shouted, gambling everything on words. The guards hesitated not long. Half a second maybe, but enough. She hit the door at full speed, shoulder connecting with expensive wood, handle turning under desperate pressure. The door opened. She fell through into controlled chaos. Monitors screaming. Medical staff surrounding the bed. Young-soo's oxygen saturation at 68%. Numbers that meant brain damage, meant irreversible failure, meant minutes from death. A high-flow mask was strapped to his face, forcing oxygen like a tide he couldn't escape. Then she heard it, a voice barely audible beneath alarm sounds, weak but unmistakable. Young-soo's voice, forcing words through failing lungs. "Let her through." The room froze. Security arrived behind her, hands grabbing, pulling her back. "She tried to kill him earlier," someone shouted. But Young-soo's hand moved, trembling, determined, pointing at Aaron with the last of his strength. Let her try. And in that moment, in a room full of people educated to save lives, the only person who could was the one they least trusted. The hands released her. Not gently, not willingly, but they released. Aaron Cho stumbled forward as the security guard stepped back under Chun Young-soo's weak but unmistakable command. The room seemed to tilt, the weight of what she was about to do crashing down on her all at once. The Harmony Leaf bundle burned in her hoodie pocket like a live thing, suddenly heavier than it had ever been in the alley, heavier than it had felt running through neon streets and locked corridors. Young-soo looked worse. The gray had spread beyond his fingers now, crawling up his forearms in thin, branching lines like frost-claiming glass. His lips had taken on a faint blue cast, and every breath he drew sounded like it scraped against something sharp inside his chest. The oxygen monitor blinked mercilessly. 69%. 68. Numbers that meant brain damage. Numbers that meant there might already be things he would never get back. Even if she succeeded. Irene swallowed hard. "Everyone back," she said. Her voice surprised her. It came out steady, commanding. Dr. Kang Ji-hoon stepped forward instead, his face tight with fury and disbelief. "Absolutely not. If you attempt this against all medical advice, it will be documented as reckless endangerment at best and homicide at worst." "Documented," Aaron said. "But give me space." Phones were already out. Someone was recording, creating evidence, insurance protection, a digital paper trail that would either destroy her or force them to rewrite everything they thought they knew. The medical staff retreated just enough to form a loose circle around the bed, close enough to intervene, far enough to pretend they weren't complicit if it went wrong. Erin reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded cloth. She opened it slowly. The harmony leaf looked like nothing. Blackened fragments, crushed veins, dried edges curled inward like dead insects. No glow, no magic, no drama. Just plant matter that would be swept away as trash in any laboratory in the building. Someone scoffed quietly. "I need fire," Erin said. For a second, no one moved. Then a young nurse stepped forward, her face pale but determined, and placed a disposable lighter into Erin's shaking hand. The kind used for sealing IV lines. Mundane, ordinary, the opposite of sacred. Erin nodded once in thanks. This was the part her grandmother had done. The part Erin had only watched. She placed the crushed harmony leaf into a metal kidney basin on the side table. Flicked the lighter once. Nothing. Again. The flame caught. The leaves didn't burn. They resisted. They smoldered. Slowly. Stubbornly. Releasing thick gray smoke that curled upward like it had intention. The smell filled the room, instantly sharp, bitter, earthy, layered with something ancient and unsettling. Not incense, not pleasant. The smell of forest floor after rain, mixed with something darker. Something that made your body react before your mind could explain why. Dr. Kang took a step forward. "You're going to make him inhale smoke? His lungs are already failing." "I know," Erin said quietly. "That's the point." She moved closer to the bed. Young-Soo's eyes were half closed now, consciousness slipping as his body fought a losing battle for oxygen. She leaned close enough for him to hear her over the alarms. "This is going to hurt," she whispered. "Your body will fight it. It will feel like it's killing you. You have to let it in." She wasn't sure he heard her. She wasn't sure he could. Erin lifted the basin and angled it toward his face, guiding the smoke carefully, deliberately, into the narrow space between breath and panic. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Young-Soo inhaled. The reaction was immediate and violent. His entire body convulsed as if struck by lightning. His back arched hard enough to strain the restraints. A sound tore out of his throat that wasn't a scream so much as something being dragged out of him against its will. Alarms exploded. "Stop!" Dr. Kang shouted, lunging forward. "You're killing him!" Security surged. Hands grabbed Erin's shoulders, yanking her backward. "Wait!" the nurse shouted, staring at the monitor. "His oxygen, it's rising!" The room froze. 68, 70, 74. Young-Soo coughed. Not the dry, hollow cough from before, but something deeper, wetter, tearing upward from somewhere far below the lungs. And then it came out. Black fluid spilled from his mouth in thick, viscous waves, splattering onto the sheets, the floor, the side of the bed. Too much. Far too much to have been there logically. It looked like oil. Like tar. Like poison finally being given a physical form. Gasps rippled through the room. The coughing continued, violent and relentless, his body purging itself with desperate determination. More black fluid. More choking expulsions. The smell changed as it left him less sweet now, more acrid, like something burning away. The alarms shifted tone. Not emergency. Recovery. Oxygen saturation climbed. 80, 86, 90. The coughing slowed, became productive instead of panicked, clearing instead of drowning. Young-Soo inhaled, deep, real, the first true breath he had taken since the poison claimed his lungs. Silence crashed into the room. 94%, 96, alive. Dr. Kang stared at the monitors as if they had betrayed him personally. His mouth opened, closed. That's not possible. Young-Soo's eyes opened fully, clear, aware. He turned his head slowly and looked at Erin. She was shaking now, the adrenaline finally breaking, hands slick with sweat and ash. He reached for her, fingers weak but present. She took his hand. "Thank you," he rasped. And in that moment, surrounded by doctors trained to save lives. The person who had actually done it was a black homeless girl with a dead grandmother's knowledge and an herb no textbook had ever bothered to study. She hadn't followed protocol. She had broken it. And she had saved him anyway. Dawn arrived without permission, pale light filtering through the reinforced windows of Honnold Premier Medical Center's VIP suite. It came softly, almost apologetically, as if unsure it was welcome after the night that had unfolded inside these walls. The city outside stretched awake, glass towers catching the first gold of morning, traffic beginning its low, distant hum, completely unaware that a man who should have been dead was breathing steadily less than 10 stories above it. Arin Cho sat in a chair security had reluctantly provided after Chun Yong-soo made it clear she was not leaving. The upholstery was expensive, real leather that still smelled faintly of polish and money, but her body barely registered it. Exhaustion pressed into her bones, deep and aching, the kind that came not from lack of sleep alone, but from sustained terror finally loosening its grip. Across the room, nurses moved quietly, efficiently, stripping black-stained sheets from the bed and sealing them into biohazard bags, as if this were routine, as if people coughed tar from their lungs every day, as if the smell of sweet rot didn't still cling faintly to the air, stubborn and wrong, resisting the hospital's best efforts to erase it. Chun Yong-soo was sitting up, actually sitting, not propped, not slumped, sitting. Color had begun to return to his face in cautious increments, the ashen gray retreating, as though whatever had claimed him was being forced to give ground inch by inch. His arms still trembled faintly with weakness, but the gray that had crept across his fingers and forearms was receding, like tidewater pulling back from shore. The oxygen monitor beside him held steady 98%, heart rate normalized, blood pressure stabilizing. Every machine in the room insisted on the same impossible truth. He was alive. Yong-soo looked at Arin with eyes that had stared directly into the architecture of death and somehow found their way back. There was no arrogance in his gaze now, no calculation, just sharp awareness and something like respect that hadn't been there before. "Tell me everything," he said. His voice was rough, raw from hours of coughing and near suffocation, but it was strong, stronger than it had any right to be. So she did. She told him about the phone conversation she'd half heard through ventilation shafts and concrete walls, a doctor's voice, calm and assured, discussing timelines and outcomes as if death were a deliverable. About the phrase that had frozen her blood, letting the lungs finish collapsing. About Dr. Kang Ji-hoon's certainty that Yong-soo would not survive, not might not, but would not. About how the oxygen increases came despite obvious deterioration, protocol applied with mechanical devotion, even as the patient spiraled. She told him how Ji-hoon had tried to frighten her into compliance, how he'd framed her presence as a liability, her knowledge as dangerous ignorance, her very existence as something that would complicate a clean death. Yong-soo listened without interruption. He did not look at Ji-hoon's empty place near the doorway. He did not look at the nurses or guards or the machines. His attention never left Arin's face, as if committing her words to memory with the same precision he once used to memorize market fluctuations and acquisition targets. When she finished, the room felt quieter, not because the machines had stopped, but because something heavy had settled into place. Yong-soo reached for his phone, not the hospital handset, not the monitored line integrated into the room. His own phone. He dialed a number from memory. The call connected on the first ring. "It's me," he said. "I need you to seize Dr. Kang Ji-hoon's phones. All of them. Personal, hospital-issued, burner if he has one. Immediately." He listened for half a second, then continued, voice calm, surgical. "Also freeze his accounts. Bank, investment, offshore, everything. Yes, I have grounds. Attempted murder tends to qualify." A pause. "I don't care about legal sequencing. Do it now, or find new employment." He ended the call without ceremony and dialed again. "Chief Prosecutor Kim." Chun Yong-soo. Another pause, shorter this time. Yes, I'm aware of the reports. I'm fine, thank you. Which is exactly why I'm calling. I need a formal investigation opened into Dr. Kang Ji-hoon of Hanul Premier Medical Center. Financial records, communication logs, hospital access orders, isolation authorizations, everything. His eyes flicked briefly to Aaron, then back to nothing. I have reason to believe he was paid to ensure my death. I'm also very much alive, despite his best efforts, which should simplify your interest. 3 more calls followed. Each one precise, controlled, no raised voice, no dramatics, just the quiet dismantling of a man's professional life by someone who knew exactly which institutional levers to pull and how hard. Within 15 minutes, Dr. Kang Ji-hoon's world was collapsing in ways he could not yet see. Bank alerts firing, audit flags triggering, internal hospital security receiving instructions they could not ignore. Aaron watched it all with a mixture of awe and unease. This was power deployed without shouting. This was what it looked like when consequences finally found someone who believed himself untouchable. Yong-soo set the phone down and turned to her. You were right, he said. About everything. The poison, the oxygen, the doctor. He paused, then asked something that surprised her. Where did you sleep last night? In an alley, Aaron answered. Behind a restaurant that closed. Something crossed his face, then anger, sharp and contained, aimed not at her but at the world that had made such an answer possible. No more, he said. I don't need. You don't sleep outside anymore, he interrupted. Not after saving my life. Aaron stiffened. I'm not looking for charity. Good, Yong-soo said calmly. Neither am I. He shifted slightly, wincing as his body reminded him it was not yet done paying for the night. This isn't kindness. It's logic. You possess knowledge that people tried to kill me to keep hidden. You see patterns trained specialists missed. That makes you valuable. She opened her mouth to argue, to reject the weight of that word, but he raised a hand. I am not offering you protection because I feel generous. I'm offering you employment because people like Dr. Kang believe ignorance wears expensive suits. I need someone who proves them wrong. I'm not a doctor, Aaron said. I don't have credentials. I don't. I have doctors, Yong-soo replied. They nearly killed me. The statement landed without malice, just fact. This city runs on systems, he continued. Healthcare, technology, finance, all of them designed by people who think like Ji-hoon, people who mistake standardization for truth. I need someone who sees where those systems break. A knock sounded at the door. A woman entered efficient, composed, carrying a tablet. She spoke with the clipped professionalism of someone accustomed to crisis. Sir, security has Dr. Kang contained in a consultation room. What are your instructions? Let him wait, Yong-soo said. Fear is educational. The woman nodded once and remained still. Aaron swallowed. The nurse, she said suddenly. The one who was in the room earlier. She touched her throat. She needs treatment. Yong-soo's gaze sharpened, not with suspicion, but with approval. Find her, he said to the woman. Immediately. Full care. Full pay during treatment. Whatever she needs. The woman tapped her screen and left without question. Yong-soo turned back to Aaron. What would you even do? Aaron asked quietly. If I said yes. Whatever requires someone who survived by noticing what others ignore, he answered. Research. Pattern analysis. Consulting on cases that don't make sense. Frankly, we'll discover the role together. Aaron stared at the floor, at the clean lines of a room that had nearly become a death chamber. She thought of the alley, the concrete slab, the tin with the harmony leaf wrapped in cloth like a relic of another life. She thought of her grandmother dying in an Atlanta shelter because knowledge without authority was just noise. She thought of the nurse coughing in a bathroom somewhere, tasting something sweet. I don't know how to be anything other than invisible, she said. Then learn, Yong-soo replied gently. Invisibility kept you alive, but survival isn't the same as living. Outside, the city had fully awakened. Traffic surged. Screens lit. People began another day, unaware of how close a balance had shifted. Erin reached into her pocket and felt the crushed remnants of Harmony Leaf, warm from her body heat. "Okay," she said. "I'll try." Young-Soo smiled, not the sharp, dangerous smile that had built empires, but something smaller, genuine. "That's all I ask," he said. "Try. We'll figure out the rest." And somewhere inside Hanul Premier Medical Center, in the spaces between walls where the invisible learn to move, the balance finally tipped. Because sometimes the person no one sees is exactly the one who changes everything.